Okay. Good morning. My name is Reverend Rachel Tedesco, and I'm your worship leader for today's service. I warmly welcome you to the First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church in Bridgewater. I've been a member here for about a dozen years. I'm not sure exactly when I joined, and I serve on the Social Justice Committee and the Worship Committee, and I'm happy to sing in the choir. What I love about the First Parish is the fact that members here are willing to pitch in and help out in any way they can, whether it's in a small way or a big way, and we appreciate their involvement. This morning, we are pleased to welcome our guest preacher, Reverend Hank Pierce, who I went to Andover Newton with, so did I?
Only a few years ago.
Only a few years ago. So, and in your order of service, there's a description. So Reverend Hank Pierce is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist and a passionate, creative minister dedicated to worship, outreach, and community building. He served as a settled minister at the UU Church of Medford for 12 years, where he fostered deep connections across generations, encouraged spiritual growth, and championed social justice. And you could read the rest in the insert in your order of service. Before we begin our worship, we have some announcements to make. And the first one I have is from Betty Gilson. She says she has cookies for Mainspring House and Evelyn House lunches. Please see her after the service for your boxes if you are making March 6th lunches. Okay. And the second announcement I have is from Sam.
Good morning. This is really a town-related announcement. All of us here benefit from the wonderful lights that are put up during the holiday season, all of December and into January. And I received this message from Marilee Hunt, whom most of you know as the former town clerk and mover and shaker of all things Bridgewater. She's hoping that a committee could be formed to keep the lights event going each year, because she's getting tired and can't really continue to do all that work. So she gave me this flyer, which has some tear-offs on it with her contact info, and I'll leave it on the table by coffee hour, and if anybody's interested in helping, you can get her info here. Thanks.
Okay, I had sent out an email a couple of days ago about we're going to produce a short video to be used at Rosemary's ordination, which is coming up March 9th. There are several ways you can participate. Today, after the service, hopefully it won't take too long, we're going to record anybody that would like to come up and say one word about Rosemary that makes you really think of her, and then maybe a sentence after. I'm going to use authenticity, because I think that Rosemary really always speaks her truth, and I feel like she's allowing us to really get to know who she is. So just something brief like that. We're hoping that people will participate today. We may do it also next week, but the other way you can participate, if you don't want to come up on camera, is get one of the pieces of paper near the entrance to the sanctuary and just write a word about Rosemary. Put your name and just a sentence about, just something that you feel about her. And Desiree will read them on camera. And just if you don't feel like being on camera to do that, you can also email me. I'll send out another email just to remind folks that you can also do that way. And we can record that your word and the sentence that you would like to say about her. So those are all the ways you can participate. So please hang out for just a little bit in the sanctuary, or, turn in your little pieces of paper by the end of the service, and we'll do that. So, all right, and again, March 9th, we're going to have a watch party for Rosemary's ordination. They're going to be Zooming it, so we thought we'd get together here and have like our own celebration. It won't be exactly like being there, but Rosemary said she'd really like people to be able to see it. So, all right, thank you. A little,
6 p.m.
What?
6 p.m.
Oh, yes. It will be 6 p.m. And that will be, we can, gather a little bit early if you want, because it's going to be 3 p.m., I think, out where she is. So it'll be 6 p.m. here for the watch party. Thanks.
I hope there is no other announcements, if there are. Okay. First Parish Bridgewater is a welcoming congregation. We proudly fly the rainbow flag to symbolize our welcome to people of all identities, ages, and backgrounds. If you are new to First Parish, we hope you enjoy your experience this morning. We encourage you to fill out the guest book on the table at the rear of the sanctuary, making sure to include your email address to receive church updates. For newcomers joining online, please see the sign-up link posted in the chat. We invite all who are here in person to join us after the service for a time of fellowship in the Upper Parish Hall. The service is being hosted via Zoom. It is recorded for Bridgewater Cable TV and for YouTube. You can find the link to the YouTube video in the weekly bridging. The recording camera is turned off to protect your privacy during the sharing of joys and sorrows. In the event of an emergency or evacuation drill, please leave the building through the main sanctuary doors, or should you need a ramp, through the School Street entrance to my left. You are welcome here. Thank you for joining us. Your presence makes a difference. We will now begin our time for worship with the prelude. Our guest minister, Reverend Pierce, will be lighting the chalice. Please join in reciting our chalice lighting words. We light our chalice to mark this sacred hour as we gather in this beautiful
Spirit. And generations that have come here for the divine, let us join our hearts. Worship together.
Let us join in the affirmation of our covenant.
Is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, seek truth, love, and to help one another. All that dwells below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
Okay. To the pastoral.
Please be seated. They're so formal here in Bridgewater. Our opening words come from Bucky McKeeman, who wrote, "Let there be light. Let it shine in all those places of shadow, in moments of pain, in times of grief, in the darkness of hatred, violence, oppression, where there is discouragement and despair, wherever shadow is to be put to flight, let there be light." It is wonderful to be here. Thank you, Rachel, for all the introduction. I was saying this morning that I think the only other time I've been here, and it's still a little foggy back there, because I was the youth representative on the Balut Channing board in 1981, which is really long time ago. I grew up down in Fairhaven. I usually have to say outside of New Bedford, but you guys know where Fairhaven is, so I get to say I grew up in Fairhaven. It's really nice to be here, and what a magnificent building this is, and it is truly a joy to be here. Our first hymn you'll find in your teal hymnal. It's number 1046. Shall we gather at the river? And I just want to remind you all, this is a question. Shall we gather at the river? So when it comes in, the question is asked, shall we gather at the river? And then the answer is, yes, we'll gather. So you have to give it a bit of a oomph there when we say yes. So that's just a reminder. So please rise as you are able and willing and sing number 1046, Shall We Gather at the River?
Now is the time in the service for the sharing of joys and sorrows, those matters of great personal significance that touch us, our families, and our loved ones. If you have a joy or sorrow, please come to the front to light a candle. If you would like to speak, please keep your sharing brief at this time so the ritual moves smoothly. You may also choose to light your candle in silence. Online participants are invited to share by typing your joys and sorrows in the chat. A volunteer in the sanctuary will read them aloud.
Let us open our hearts in prayer. O maker of life, whose law is love, whose truth is timeless, steady our hearts as the heavens are steady, and the weight of the world bends our backs. Lift our eyes to the skies that sing your glory. Let their sure speech remind us that justice is patient, persistent, and true. We think this day of those in the Ukraine as they mark the 3rd anniversary of that war. Their courage and their vision at such a difficult time. May it be an inspiration to all of us. And we also hold in our prayers those people we know and those we don't know who have been affected by so many layoffs from the government. There is so much fear, not only from those who have served us in our government, but amongst so many of the rest of us. Give us courage in the face of an onslaught. Grant us courage to walk in the warmth of your witness, to speak boldly as the sun shines freely, to sow seeds of love where cruelty takes root. May the meditations of our hearts and the works of our hands rise to meet the beauty of your creation, faithful and unafraid. Our hymn before the offering is hymn number 1 in your silver and gray hymnal. May nothing evil cross this door.
May nothing evil cross this door, and may fortune never cry about these windows make the Lord, and rain go by. My faith makes strong the rafters will. And the battering of the storm is far through all the world grows chill when he do wrong. He shall walk softly through these rooms, touching our lips with holy wine till every casual corner moves into a shrine. With laughter drown the raucous sound, and though these sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep me out and hold nothing.
Each Sunday, we collect an offering through the ministries of the church and the mission of a community organization that shares our faith values. This month, contributions to our collection plate will be shared with the UU Mass Action. Hey, I used to be a member of the board there. I love it. It's a statewide advocacy group mobilizing Unitarian Universalists in Massachusetts to confront oppression. They work in coalitions to advance justice, focusing on legislative momentum and the needs of the most vulnerable. To donate, you could write a check to First Parish with UU Mass Action in the memo line. You may also donate online through the First Parish website. This morning's offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Our reading this morning is Gate A4 by the poet Naomi Shihab Nye. Wandering around the Albuquerque airport terminal, after learning my flight had been delayed for 4 hours, I heard an announcement. If anyone in the vicinity of Gate A4 understands any Arabic, please come to the gate immediately. Well, one pauses these days. Gate A4 is my own gate. I went there. An older woman in full traditional Palestinian embroidered dress, just like my grandma wore, was crumpled to the floor, wailing loudly. "Help," said the flight service person. "Talk to her. What's her problem? We told her the flight was going to be late, and she did this." I stooped to put my arm around the woman and spoke to her haltingly. "Shadawa, Shubidik, Habiti, Stani Shwe, Min Faldik, Shubitsiwi." The minute she heard any words she knew, however poorly used, she stopped crying. She thought the flight had been canceled entirely. She needed to be in El Paso in the morning for major medical treatment. I said, "No, we're fine. You'll get there, just later. Who is picking you up? Let's call him." We called her son, and I spoke to him in English. I told him I would stay with his mother till we got on the plane, and I would even ride next to her. She talked to him. Then we called her other sons, just for the fun of it. Then we called my dad, and he and she spoke for quite a while in Arabic and found out, of course, that they had 10 friends in common. Then I thought, just for the heck of it, why not call some Palestinian poets I knew and let them chat with her? This all took 2 hours. She was laughing a lot by then, telling me about her life, patting my knee, answering questions. She had pulled a sack of homemade mamoul cookies, little powdered sugar crumbly mounds stuffed with dates and nuts out of her bag, and was offering them to all the women at the gate. To my amazement, not a single woman declined one. It was like a sacrament. The traveler from Argentina, the mom from California, the lovely woman from Laredo, we were all covered with the same powdered sugar and smiling. There is no better cookie. And then the airline broke out free beverages from huge coolers, and 2 little girls from our flight ran around serving us all apple juice, and they were covered with powdered sugar too. And I noticed my new best friend, by now we were holding hands, had a potted plant poking out of her bag, something medicinal with green furry leaves, such an old country tradition. Always carry a plant. Always stay rooted somewhere. And I looked around that gate of late and weary ones, and I thought, this is the world I want to live in, the shared world. Not a single person in that gate, once the crying and confusion stopped, seemed apprehensive about another person. They took the cookies. I wanted to hug all those other women too. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost. Imagine there are some prisoners who have been chained in a cave as long as they can remember, and they're chained in such a way that all they can see is the wall behind, is the wall in front of them, the wall that faces the open cave. They are chained, so they can only see that wall. And every morning when the sun comes up and shines into that cave, shadows begin to appear on that wall. The shadows of people and animals and objects going by the mouth of the cave. And these prisoners have gotten pretty good at being able to identify the different shadows, what those different shadows are. Oh, look, there's that little dog again. And oh, there's an older woman. She seems to be carrying something. It looks like a little table or something. And this goes on and on and on. And then one day, one of the prisoners is released. He's unchained and he's dragged up to the mouth of the cave and he's left there. At first, the light is just too bright and too strong for him to understand or to really see what's going on out there in the real world. But slowly his eyes begin to adjust. Slowly he's able to see the images. And soon a little dog comes up and he's able to reach out and touch its fur and touch its wet nose. And then he sees an elderly woman, and she seems to be carrying maybe a footstool. And then he realizes, after a few more days, that the images that he and his fellow prisoners have been seeing on the walls are just shadows. and that he is now interacting with real things out in the world. He realized that when he and his comrades were there in the cave, they thought that the shadows on the wall were real. But now he's out in the real world, experiencing real world things. The shadows are just shadows. And he feels the urge to go back and to tell his comrades about what he's seen. Tell them this news about the difference between this world of shadows that they've been experiencing and then the real world. So he goes back down to the cave. And he starts to tell his friends what he's seen and experienced outside there in the cave. And at first they think he's gone crazy, and they laugh at him, and they ask if he can decipher the shadows that are on the wall now. But now it's been too long, and he can't really describe or identify what those shadows are. But he keeps trying to tell them about the real world outside the cave. And they start to get upset because they think that he's making fun of them. And soon they get angry with him, and they shove him, and they become violent with him because they don't like his version of reality. Now, for all of you who have taken Philosophy 101, you might recognize this as Plato's story of the cave. Plato told this story for two reasons. First, to say that it's difficult to be a philosopher trying to educate the public. And the second is to point out his idea about ideal forms. That first point of Plato's, to say it was difficult to be a philosopher trying to educate the public. Plato said that most people are comfortable in their ignorance, and some may be hostile to anyone who points that out. Socrates, his mentor and friend, had been sentenced to death by the Athenian government for disrupting the social order, for doing exactly that, pointing out the real world. We don't have to think back to ancient Athens to see examples of this, to see people who wanted to violently resist the truth. Many of us only have to think back just a few weeks to when those who rioted on January 6th were pardoned by our present president. People got violent when they were told that they've been living in a world of shadows and that those shadows aren't real. I used to belong to an online chat group of clergy. And on this chat group were hundreds and hundreds of people. Different ages, abilities, different races, different classes, different expressions of gender. However, this chat group tended to be dominated by a group of older white guys who were even older and whiter than me. A friend recently said, said that we are stale, pale, and male. And no matter what happened in this chat group, whatever was written about, whatever questions were asked, these guys tended to steer the conversation back to being about them. And not surprising, and this chat group was a thing that people would pop in, and they might sort of say, hey, I'm having a problem at my congregation, any advice, or just something's going on in my personal life, or just, looking for some affirmation, looking for some help, maybe even just looking for some other folks to celebrate an achievement with them. But no matter what people wrote about, these guys would get on and bend the conversation back to being about them, which, not surprisingly, made a group of clergy, that the majority of the folks in that clergy group got quite frustrated. And people would express and say that they were frustrated with these guys, and then these guys would write back, "Why are you attacking us?" Which made people even more frustrated and more upset. And people would stomp off out of the group, as you do online. Well, after one of these big blowouts, another friend of mine got on this chat group, and in a very simple way, for everyone to understand, he began to write about Copernicus. Now, I know you're saying to yourself, we have a guest minister who's already talked about Plato, and now he's talking about Copernicus. It's a lovely winter morning. It's going to be warm for the first time in days. We can maybe chip off that ice. I'm just telling you, hang with me. So Copernicus, as you all remember, was that 15th century astronomer and mathematician. And it was he who realized that the earth was not the center of the universe. Up until that time in the West, people believed that the earth was the center of the universe and that everything revolved around us. And he was the person who realized that it was the sun, that the earth revolved around the sun. Before Copernicus, people thought the earth was the center of the universe, the sun revolving around us. Then Copernicus said the sun was what the earth revolved around. And a few decades later, another mathematician came and said, nope, you know what? The sun itself is only one star among an infinite universe with no center at all. For pre-Copernican people who knew the earth was the center of the universe, it must have been frustrating to interact with others who related to the actual infinite universe in which there is no center. These days, pre-Copernican white men roam the earth, seeing their perspective as objective, their priorities as normal, and their needs as primary. But let's be honest, it feels good to inhabit the center of the universe. For most of us, that is the world that we've grown up with. And in some ways, whether you are a white male or not, in some ways, that is how you've understood how things are. Almost all the institutions, the policies, the dictionaries uphold this guiding fiction. In a generous moment, a pre-Copernican white man will entertain the perspective of, say, an African-American woman, but only if her opinions orbit, accent, and affirm the centrality of the truth, his truth. Here's a list of some of the fastest growing cities in the world. Fuzhou, Ankara, Xiamen, Hangzhou, Kunming, Dubai, Bursa, Istanbul. What these cities, these centers of vitality, have in common is that none are driven by a pre-Copernican white man's perspective. None of those cities is the fruit of the Enlightenment, or even a reaction to it. So the pre-Copernican white man who insists that his perspective is the objective truth is not only inaccurate, it's also increasingly absurd. Still, these pre-Copernican folk, when challenged, speak louder and with bravado, trying to snare us back into the orbit of the pre-Copernican earth. They want to believe that the shadows on the wall are real, and they want us to believe it as well. They want us to believe that the universe revolves around them. They want us to believe what they believe, that diversity, equity, and inclusion is somehow the fault of all that's wrong in our government. They want to put forward alternative facts. Now, the second reason why Plato told the story of the cave was to explain his concept of ideal forms. Like shadows on the wall, things in this physical world are just flawed reflections of some ideal form. Plato believed that everything in the real world were mere shadows of an ultimate ideal form. So this morning, just a few minutes ago, when I talked about the elderly woman who walked by with a footstool, if we were somehow able to take a picture of what that footstool looked like in each one of your heads, and were able to put them up on the screen, each one of those footstools no doubt would have been different from everybody else's. It might have been a footstool in the church you grew up in, or the footstool at your grandmother's house, or one that you just bought, or one you've seen in a one you've seen online. But if we looked at all those pictures and looked at all those footstools, there would be something footstoolish about all of them. Plato theorized that there must be an ultimate footstool someplace. And this ultimate footstool was what all other footstools were based upon. Theologians who followed Plato loved this idea because they extended this idea not just to physical things like footstools, but to emotions and values, so that there must be an ultimate form of truth and an ultimate form of love. And then when Christian theologians came in, they took this idea and said, yes, and it is God who is the one who is the keeper of all these ultimate ideals. God is the ultimate form of love. God knows the ultimate truth. God is the great librarian, the keeper of all of these ideal forms. Now, how this idea influences us is the idea that only God has all the truth. So that every one of us knows a part of the truth, but no one person knows everything. Let me say that again. This idea, this Platonic idea that God is the keeper of all knowledge of all things, means that what we know is only part of that ultimate truth. But it also means that no one person knows everything. And this should keep us hungry and humble. What this teaches us as Unitarian Universalists is that we all have a part of the truth. And none of us have all the truth. And this should leave us hungry, striving to find out more truth, but also humble, knowing that we will never know all of the truth. We will never get to know everything. It was this understanding that allowed the Transcendentalists to explore other religious traditions, to realize that revelation isn't sealed, but that it is continuous. That the words and values from other traditions can inform our own, and we should be open to them. I had a professor in seminary who was teaching us a class on Buddhism. And I remember the books that he assigned us, the readings he assigned us. The first was a passage from the Diamond Sutra. Now, I'm not sure if any of you know anything about Buddhism, but the Diamond Sutra, I think, is only called that because it's really hard to understand. And here I was in a sort of a Buddhism 101 class trying to read this text, and I didn't understand any of it. And then the following week, we read about a Buddhist monk who rode motorcycles. And the week after was another story about some Buddhists who did something, and by that point, I raised my hand in class. I said, Professor, why are you having us read these really different things about Buddhism? And he said, if I taught Buddhism the same way that Christianity is taught, you would learn about the life of the Buddha, and maybe 100 or 200 years after he lived. And then you'd go out into the world, and you'd meet some real Buddhists, and you'd ask them what they believed and how they practiced it, and it would have nothing to do with what you learned in this class. He said, I'm giving you different tastes. And then he said, you know those glass prisms that you hold up to the sunlight and a rainbow would come out? And the more sides to those prisms, the more the way that the light is dispersed around the room is different. He said, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give you more and more little windows to look in. More and more little windows to look in to see what is at the center of what Buddhism is. And I love that explanation. As a Unitarian Universalist, I love that. I thought, like, the more information, the more ways we get to be able to look in, whether it's a subject on religion or anything else, the more voices we are able to hear and to see, we get to understand what is at the center. Because I'm hungry for that knowledge, and yet I know I will never know everything. As Unitarian Universalists, we think about the Platonic concept of ideal forms differently. We acknowledge that no one person has all the truth about truth, or the sacred, or God. And we don't believe that one person or group has the truth about religion. Some may have studied more, reflected more, experienced more. And those things are brought in and shared, and the whole becomes richer for it. I'm sure you've been in a small group ministry. Perhaps you have them here, or you've experienced that, and you get to be in a small group, and you're talking about a reading, and you're in with people that you've known for years, people you taught Sunday school with, or you served on these committees with, and all of a sudden this person you thought you knew is sharing their thoughts, and you realize how different those thoughts are from yours, and yet their knowledge, their experience, your knowledge, and your experience adds to the richness of that group, and it adds to the richness of this place. This is how we as Unitarian Universalists, this is the basis of our theology. This is how we can have someone who's a Christian, and someone who's a Buddhist, and someone who's a humanist, all together in the same pew every Sunday morning, maybe even in the same car on the ride home, maybe all held in one person. This is what allows us to have the theological diversity that we adore and that we prize. Because it allows us to continue on that journey to gather in more information, to get closer to what the truth may actually be. Going back to our reading, thinking of the older woman crying on the floor of the airport, and the staff who are frustrated because they couldn't understand each other. And it makes me think that maybe the role of our faith, the role that our faith can play in this world, is to help those whose understanding of the world and the universe is different, by bringing people together, sharing words of compassion, bringing them into circles with others who think differently, bringing and sharing joy locally. Maybe not at the national level, maybe just here in Bridgewater. We bring people together to talk, to share ideas, share our humanity with each other. And at the end of it, we all get cookies. This is the world I want to live in, the shared world. And I bet it is the world you want too. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost. Our closing hymn you'll find in your silver and gray hymnal. It's number 187. It sounds along the ages, a good old classic Unitarian hymn, 187. Please rise as you are able and willing.
Sang it, from martyrs' lips it broke, and prophets' tongues outrang it, till sleeping nations woke. From Sinai's cliffs it echoed, in rude as tree. It shone in Athens market, it hallowed Galilee. The hammer stroke of Luther, the pilgrim seaside prayer, the oracles of Concord, one holy word declared. It calls and lo, new justice, it speaks and lo, new truth. In ever nobler stature, exhausted youth, forever on resounding, and knowing not of time, are the cats of music of its eternal chime.
Our closing words come from Peter Rollins and the Icon community of Northern Ireland. The task has ended. Go in pieces. Our faith has been rear-ended, certainty amended, and something might be mended that we didn't know was torn. And we are fire, bright, burning fire, turning from the higher places from which we fell, emptying ourselves into the hell in which we'll find our loving and beloved mother, father, sibling, friend. And so, friends, the task has ended. Go in pieces to see and to feel your world. This flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we together again.
Our time for worship has ended. Our time for fellowship now begins. If you would like to stay to socialize and have some refreshments, please make your way to the upper parish hall.
Everyone, it's Dan in the loft. If you'd like to take maybe about 15 minutes and have something, and then we'll be set up here for anyone that would like to participate in the video that we're making for, well, she will be Reverend Rosemary's.
So let's say meet back here at 11:50.
We'll meet back here at 11:50.